Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Hi guys, and welcome to another Fool of the Week. This week's Fool is me. Yes, myself, Max. Over the last few weeks, I've been singing the praises of Tory MP, Secretary of State for Northern Ireland and ERG member Chris Heaton-Harris. Chris delivered some very powerful speeches over the last number of months on the importance of not just the implementation of the Northern Ireland Protocol, but why peace on the island of Ireland needs to be protected. He called for real leadership, which no doubt put him on a collision course with the ERG's partners in crime, the DUP, but Chris seemed sincere and truly concerned about peace. Then Chris made me look like an absolute fool in this interview where he was asked about Boris Johnson's role in the Northern Ireland Protocol. Have a listen.
Mind you, the former Prime Ministers, Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, are going to be here, along with Theresa May. You probably know there are some people around here, I don't need to name them, who aren't very happy about Boris Johnson turning up to this occasion. Why don't you set them straight if you can? What's been Boris Johnson's contribution to what you're celebrating here, peace and reconciliation in Northern Ireland?
Well, actually, and to be quite frank, John, Boris's contribution was started when, and it's not. This is a reflection on where we got to with the Windsor Framework, because we needed to reset our relationship with the European Union to get that. The process of that actually started by how we helped with the issues on the Polish border when Belarus was stuffing refugees across the border. Then
What? What are you talking about, Chris? Please, Chris, don't do this to me. He's talking about peace on the island of Ireland. He's talking about the Good Friday Agreement. He's talking about the Northern Ireland Protocol. And you're talking about refugees moving from Ukraine into Poland.
Boris led the group of countries for Ukraine. He built us credibility amongst many EU countries that gave us the opportunity later to build the Windsor Framework.
No, Chris, that's not how it worked. Boris Johnson and Liz Truss were talking about ripping up the Northern Ireland Protocol. They were talking about triggering Article 16. This festered. This reduced trust. This destroyed trust between the UK and the EU. And you know who rebuilt the trust? Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak decided, we're going to end this charade and I'm going to try and rebuild some of that trust, rebuild bridges between the UK and the EU. Not completely, okay, he's still a Brexiteer and he made some really stupid mistakes recently, but the Windsor Framework was described as rebuilding trust by Ursula von der Leyen. Boris Johnson was destroying trust. Liz Truss as well. Rishi Sunak was seen as somebody who was rebuilding it.
I know the point of what you're trying to say in your question, but quite honestly...
What am I trying to say in my question?
I get the feeling you're trying to say that people in Northern he calls the Northern Ireland Protocol. I generally think that Boris thought the Northern Ireland Protocol would solve problems.
We certainly...
But, okay. He caused the Northern Ireland Protocol. Theresa May had a plan. I don't know how long it would have lasted. It was temporary. But the idea being that the UK as a whole would have remained within the single market. So there would be no need for checks on the border between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. There'd be no need for any checks, between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. There would be no need for any borders. Things would stay pretty much as they are. But Boris Johnson resigned over that and said, I'll get something better. And what did he get? Well, he got the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is of course worse than Theresa May's deal. Because what does it do? It puts a border between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Boris Johnson, of course, went to Northern Ireland and lied about that. So there won't be a border. Of course, we're not going to put a border between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. No Prime Minister would ever do such a thing. Theresa May said no British Prime Minister would ever do it. And then Boris Johnson turned around and did it. And then complained that there's a border between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, complained about the Northern Ireland Protocol, and threatened to rip it up. And I had said on numerous occasions this was only a threat. They were never actually going to go through with it. But they still threatened it. In the House of Commons, when Boris Johnson was interviewed, Liz Truss the same, David Frost, yeah, we're going to rip up the Northern Ireland Protocol if we don't get our way.
Pose the framework that you're celebrating here today.
Yeah, and as I say, everybody's allowed to make one mistake.
And Boris Johnson, of course, voted against or opposed any. I don't remember whether he actually voted in the House of Commons, but he opposed anyway the Windsor Framework because he wanted the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, which was to allow government ministers to ignore international law. And of course, Rishi Sunak said, look, we can't go along with this. This is destroying whatever trust we have that remains between us and the EU. So he promised the EU, look, I'll get rid of this Northern Ireland Protocol Bill. So ministers will not be able to break international law. And instead, we can build on that trust by having the Windsor Framework, which received a massive majority of support in the House of Commons. So Boris Johnson is yesterday's news. Boris Johnson should just go away. He created problems, he denied those problems, and he tried to stop others from fixing those problems. But the way that Chris Heaton-Harris defended Johnson here or tried to avoid it made me look like the Fool of the Week. See you next time for our next Fool of the Week.